Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
This message is sponsored by Greenlight. With school out, summer is the perfect time to teach our kids real-world money skills they'll use forever. Greenlight is a debit card and the #1 family finance and safety app used by millions of families, helping kids learn how to save, invest, and spend wisely. Parents can send their kids money and track their spending and saving, while kids build money confidence and skills in fun ways. Start your risk-free Greenlight trial today at greenlight.com/Spotify. That's greenlight.com/Spotify.
Unfiltered discussions, unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hello and welcome. We've got a fun and informative show for you tonight. Here's what you'll learn by the end of tonight's program. A massive UK study suggests that mixing psychedelics and cannabis during the pandemic might have actually improved some people's mental health. And to be clear, kids and adults, do not try this at home. We are not advocating any drug use of any kind. But it is an interesting study. Is this science, coincidence, or something stranger? We will dig into the data, the context, and perhaps the controversy of a new paper that links psychedelic use to mental health recovery during times of crisis. We'll discuss that in 10 minutes' time. After that, love is in the air and on 8 legs, because it's tarantula mating season and hundreds, maybe billions are on the move. Okay, I over-exaggerated a bit. We'll find out where they're going, what they're looking for, and why you probably won't need to run away from these bugs, spiders, insects, whatever they are, screaming. Probably. It's all things tarantulas getting busy, if you know what I mean, halfway through the hour. That is merely some of tonight's program. We've got other great stuff coming up. We'll tell you more about it as the show progresses.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
And in drug dealers being caught by the behavior of their exotic pet news, we are joined by foreign correspondent Tony Five in London, England, and it's back to the basics here on The Last Show. We are covering the area that Tony and I, well, specialist isn't the right word, but it's an area that we care a lot about, bird news.
David, this is quite literally one of my favourite stories of the year so far. No celebrity death, no celebrity endorsement. No war can ever be what we're going to talk about shortly. I think we have now cornered the market in North America, Mexico, Canada, and Guadalajara on bird-related news.
I think Guadalajara is in Mexico, but that's not important.
Well, some people say that, David. I don't believe in Big Mexico.
All right, here we are, bird news. I feel like, Tony, we have specialized. It's bizarre bird news. It's beautiful bird news. Can't think of any other B words, but let's jump into the story.
David, wonderful seaside place, Blackpool, Lancashire. Picture the scene, my friend. What we have in the UK, we have them called county lines. Have you heard of this before?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of country music songs have the phrase county line in them, but I don't know what it means.
Well, on a serious note, county lines are where big cities who have drug dealing gangs will move out their operations of drug dealing and drug supply to the local counties. So what they'll do is they'll send these drug dealers by train to these sort of provincial areas and sell drugs.
Oh, lovely. Well, you got to have access to the small communities too. You know, it's the amenities of the big city in your small town.
Consider it a community outreach for drug dealers. Is that right? Is that the right expression?
It's an expression. Okay, so where does the birds come into play? You've got these seasoned city criminals going to small towns with their drugs. What happens?
David, to say he was shopped in. Now this is, I was thinking about this the other day. Do you have the expression grassed?
Grassed?
He was grassed on? Yeah, a grass. Do you know what a grass is?
Oh, like grassed, I guess, is how you would say it with my accent. Like grass, green grass.
So a grass is like somebody that tells on you. So let's say you did something wrong and I tell the police. So I think the technical word is an informant. But do you have like a colloquial or a slang way of saying, I don't trust that guy, he's a grass?
Yes, a snitch. We call them snitches.
Snitch!
Yeah.
I knew there was a word and I thought it was Stitch. And then I thought, no, that's the Disney character. And then I realised that's not a Disney character, that's Beauty and the Beast. So anyway.
Very much on topic here. I love it.
So basically, this parrot, an exotic bird parrot, snitched on the drug dealers by repeating the phrase 2 for 25, 2 for 25, which is how much they were selling these drugs for.
So these drug dealers, they went into a small town. They had intercity operations, but back at home at the drug base, they had a pet parrot.
He's called Mango, by the way. Wonderful name.
It's a good name for a bird. It's like a yellow parrot. And when the cops came to search the premises for drugs, I guess they had a warrant or whatever they needed, they got the bird.
Yes.
And this bird then does what?
It just says 2 for 25, 2 for 25. I hope we actually have the clip available, David.
Tony, we wouldn't be the last show if we didn't have the clip available.
Are we not the last show?
We are the last show. Honestly, I'm surprised we have the clip at the level of professionalism we operate at. But
we have actually media preparation for this story.
Marginal, but yes. All right, here's the clip of this parrot that I guess ratted out the drug dealers to the cops.
2 for 25.
I mean, it wasn't quite like,
2 for 25.
I think the first one wasn't the parrot.
Yeah, no. Yeah, the first one is the owner, I guess.
But how did they realize that was 2 for 25? Because like that could be anything. That could be, let's go to McDonald's.
I mean, maybe it was so I don't actually think the bird ratted them out. I think they found video evidence of all their operations. And in those videos...
I get it.
Yeah.
So basically, they had videoed themselves like absolute idiots talking to the bird about how much they're selling the drugs for. Because this led to 15 arrests, a grand total of 100 years plus in total of arrests of jail time.
Wow. It reminds me of our story yesterday where those people put on a bear costume, videoed it... mauled their own cars, made a allegedly fraudulent insurance claim.
Right.
And then sent the video evidence of this person in a bear suit, allegedly. It's like, why video your crimes? Are people so dumb? Like, I don't understand.
Okay, so there was another video of Paul Mango playing with the cash earned from the drug deals.
If I had drug cash, I'd let my bird play with it, but I wouldn't video it.
The Coke money patrolling parrot, David. That's what I like to call. It's unbelievable. And again, I always say the same thing. This is like my Jerry thought after we discussed these things. What are these people going to say in prison? Like, are they, like, they're going to be there, hardened criminals, like real hardcore drug dealers. And they're going to say they get caught by a parrot. They were snitched on by a parrot.
That is what they are going to say. Now, one of the people arrested, they searched his phone.
Yep.
And the guy had like detailed notes of every sale, every transaction, every price list. On the one hand, I got to commend these drug dealers for being great accountants.
You love an Excel, don't you? I don't know whether our listeners know that you love an Excel. David will send me Christmas cards in Excel, and it's absolutely fantastic. He did send me, I'm sorry about your loss, card, a commiserations card and a condolences card in Excel. Didn't really like that, but the rest of the stuff is wonderful.
I do love Excel. I have a theory that any creative work taken sufficiently seriously, although calling the show creative work and saying we take it seriously are it's up for debate, but regardless, it ends up in an Excel spreadsheet. I manage the show in an Excel spreadsheet fastidiously.
I mean, great use of the word for being anal, but yeah, absolutely.
Back to this story. You know what?
From pivot tables to parrots.
If you're going to run a red light in your car, and listeners, don't run a red light, that's illegal, don't slam on the gas, because then you've done two crimes. You've ran the red light and you've driven recklessly and sped.
And speeding, yeah.
Why not just stick to the one crime? And by that same logic, I kind of get why these drug dealers had a fastidious accounting practice going on, because yes, you're doing illegal crimes, but there's no excuse for not having good books.
Do you know what, David? That's quite good. So, great in accounting, bad in drug dealing.
And in case you're wondering how much it would have cost to buy anything from these drug dealers, I think you could have gotten That was pretty good, huh?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Well done.
Yeah, that was well done. Good use of sound effects. Tony 5 will be back later in the show as we give ourselves advice from our past to our present, which is the future from now. Tony 5, thank you.
We need to get the parrot on board. That's it. I wanted you to play that.
Coming up after the break, psychedelics, cannabis, the pandemic. A huge UK study says this unlikely combo might have helped some people's mental health bounce back. Now, to be clear, kids, we are very clearly not advocating any use of substances like that. But from a scientific perspective, can therapy and chemistry change a bad vibe, a crisis, to a good vibe? An answer to that question in just a few moments.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality walking shoes, which might lead to another discovery.
40,000 steps, baby. Who's on top now, Karen?
You've taken the office step challenge a step too far. Don't worry, though. Sierra also has yoga gear. It might be a good place to find your zen. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
We're here because your heightened awareness deserves heightened entertainment. The last show with David Cooper.
Can psychedelics help people heal during crisis? A massive UK study tracked over 2,400,000 people during the pandemic and found that those who use psychedelics and cannabis saw real mental health improvements over time. What does that mean for you? And what questions remain open? And also kids and probably adults too, don't try this at home. I am joined by Dr. Maria Balaet, a computational neuroscience researcher at King's College London. Maria, welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to see you.
I got to start with the big picture here. What made you curious about how psychedelics and cannabis might affect mental health during a global crisis, like something like the pandemic?
Well, it's not only psychedelics and cannabis, it's all drugs, really. And I think what really drawn me to this topic is how ubiquitous drug use is in society. When we first ran our study, we noticed that a lot of people indicated that they have tried illicit drugs at least once in their lifetime. This was about a third of the sample. So we established this drug use arm to follow up and then realized that a lot of people were having fluctuations in their patterns as well, the choices that they were making. They were choosing to engage with a lot of different drugs. So I got extremely interested in how is it that these fluctuations do affect them in the short and long term in terms of their mental health, cognitive ability, and so forth. And no one seems to be looking at it. So that's why I decided to take the lead, really.
I love that when there's just a space and you're like, nobody's researching this. I should do that. And then you do. This wasn't a clinical trial, though. You asked real world people, real world questions. What can that reveal about us that a clinical trial maybe can't?
Well, it's an observational study, right? So in a clinical trial, you dose people and then you're looking for the effects of your intervention. But this is quite different because what I'm doing is looking at a very, very large population set and just observing their real life behaviors, their real life choices. And there's a lot of interesting things that can emerge from it that couldn't from a clinical trial. Like you get a glimpse into what would a real person actually do in their day-to-day life and how do many people compare with the choices that they make and the outcomes that they make.
Yeah, sometimes you hear about the way clinical trials are set up and you're like, this would never happen like that in the real world. You found that the group using drugs, likely illicit ones, psychedelics, cannabis, other things, their mental health improved over time. Can you say more about the results?
Yes. So it's actually, we studied several groups. Basically, the way that the study question was set up was, what drugs have you used during this particular period of time? And we asked people this since 2019 and then at repeat time points during the COVID-19 pandemic and also in the year after the COVID-19 pandemic really passed. And then what I did was to actually group people depending on what drugs they have used using a very large machine learning computational algorithm. But psychedelics and cannabis emerged as the only group out of the others that we identified, like people using only cannabis or using cocaine or using cocaine and cannabis or using a combination of drugs. There's so many different patterns. But the ones who use psychedelics and cannabis were the only group that we saw had improvements in their mental health over this large period of time. So that was quite interesting because the others basically stayed as having quite poor mental health.
So didn't really affect them or made it worse when the drugs weren't psychedelics or cannabis?
So most people who use illicit drugs tend to have poorer mental health than individuals who are drug naive, so they never used drugs before. And they actually stayed with that level of poor mental health. There wasn't much change. It turned out that their poor mental health was quite consistent for all of the other groups.
You use something called K-modes clustering to analyze these patterns. For those of us who don't have like a university degree in data science, can you explain what that means in lay terms?
Yeah, so K-modes clustering is essentially the machine learning algorithm that I've used for mapping the drug use patterns. So you can imagine if you have a very, very large pool of data with everyone using their own combinations of drugs during a period of time. You feed this into the algorithm, and what you will see is what is the optimal split of your group. So that is how you can determine within each of these splits what drugs people are using and what characterizes each of the latent patterns or latent groups that are invisible unless you actually go in this data-driven way.
So these latent patterns, these things that you observed, it was just general reports of improved mental health, and that's the main takeaway?
No, these were just like the choices that people were making in terms of what drugs they would use. But then these choices are then used to predict their mental health scores, right?
Got it.
And then what we see is that psychedelics and cannabis is the only group that is in the long run associated with an improvement.
Now, do you think it's the psychedelics doing the work, or is it the people doing the work while they're on them? For example, we hear of clinical trials of like MDMA or certain substances with improved mental health outcomes, but it's under the direction of a therapist. They're doing some personal work, personal growth exercises. What do we think the mechanism is here?
So that's quite an interesting question because as we mentioned, this wasn't a clinical trial, so people were taking the drugs in whatever setting of their choice with whatever intention. Maybe some had a sitter, maybe others didn't. Maybe some just went to a party, you know? The variability is huge, especially at the level of sample size that we studied. And I think for some people, it might be quite surprising that we see improvements even outside of the clinical trial setting here. But what I would say is that it could be that this could be attributed to the psychedelics simply because we didn't see the same in the cannabis only group. And those individuals, and we didn't see this with any other drug use group, really. And I just want to clarify why we named this the psychedelic and cannabis group, by the way. It is a result of the K-modes clustering. It turns out that very few people who use psychedelics recreationally do not smoke cannabis as well. So you really have to look at the effects of these drugs together because they interact over a long period of time.
I would never admit to this on the radio, so what I'm about to say is for parody purposes and definitely not true. But if it were true, I'm in that group. I dislike cannabis, but have tried psychedelics.
There's very few people like that. That we could identify at least.
Well, of course, what I just said isn't true. It's for parody purposes. You studied this all during a pretty awful global moment. I don't know if you remember the pandemic. It was this thing that happened a while ago. Do you think the benefits would have been seen during a global moment of non-crisis, like not during the pandemic, or was there something special about that time?
I think this really hits the nail on the head with the pandemic because I published a paper before this one where I was looking strictly as the very peak of the pandemic and the mental health of different drug users relative to drug naive. And the psychedelics users were actually doing quite a lot worse than people who never took drugs during that period of crisis. It's only in the aftermath that we started seeing these improvements. So I definitely think, and I've written quite consistently about this before, the global context and the way that society feels at that time is quite relevant in driving the effect of drugs. I think that if we were to look at periods of time outside of the direct crisis, we are more likely to see improvements as a result of this.
Now, any other major takeaways or recommendations to people? Of course, we would never recommend taking illegal drugs outside of a clinical trial.
Yeah, of course. I really want to mention that the effects that we've seen are at group level. There was quite a lot of individual variability, and the group level effect does not mean that this is going to be the outcome for every single person involved in the study. But it is nevertheless important to map out.
Remember, kids, and remember, adults too, don't take drugs. Don't try this at home. But thanks for sharing your study with me, Maria. I've enjoyed chatting with you. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Maria Balaet is a computational neuroscience researcher at King's College London. Coming up in just a few moments, romance, desert sunsets, and many, many giant spiders. It is tarantula mating season. They are on the prowl. We'll teach you about their epic journeys, their bizarre courtship rituals. Like, for example, I think the females eat the males after they're done mating. That does not sound sexy. I wish I could say I'm looking forward to taking you through this interview, but I am an arachnophobe, and I'm pretty sure 9 out of 10 people die from tarantulas every day. We'll get the facts from someone who knows a little more than me and tell you about something called a tarantula hawk wasp. Yes, that's a real thing. After this upcoming break.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
On WhatsApp, no one can see or hear your personal messages. Whether it's a voice call, message, or sending a password. To WhatsApp, it's all just this. So whether you're sharing the streaming password in the family chat or trading those late-night voice messages that could basically become a podcast, your personal messages stay between you, your friends, and your family. No one else. Not even us. WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
Taste the forbidden fruit of knowledge. The last show with David Cooper.
It is tarantula mating season, and that means hundreds of fuzzy, love-struck spiders are crawling out of their burrows and into the spotlight. But fear not, there are those that say these gentle giants are more like Romeo than a horror movie villain. Although I'm not one of them. I'm terrified of spiders. But let's talk tarantulas' fascinating behavior, where to find them, and how not to panic when you see them, if that's possible. I'm not sure it is. I'm here with Dan McCamish, a senior environmental scientist for the Colorado Desert District of California State Parks. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. Good morning.
All right. I've recently heard, and this is definitely true, it's a fact that I just made up right now, 9 out of 10 people die every day from tarantula bites. Why are we not treating this like a global emergency?
Well, that is clearly a fact you just made up right now, right? Tarantulas are generally pretty harmless creatures. They are the largest spider that you will likely see ever in your life if you were to happen to see one. But generally, most and all 29 of our North American tarantula species, although they do have venom in their bite, it's generally a mild, non-reactive bite to humans. Most people compare it to a bee sting or less. So that fear is really, I think, driven through our pop culture media and things like that.
Well, I think it's evolutionary as well. Like, I'm sure some ancestor of mine in a cave saw a tarantula. If they were a little scared, they were more likely to live than another. So I feel like I can't control my irrational fear, but I can control how much I engage with it. And I will try not to engage with it any more than I already have. Let's talk about mating season. These creatures come out and they're excited during this time of year.
Yeah, that's what I think we want to talk about today. Is now is the time from kind of this early fall, late summer, however you want to call it, in these dog days here, up until late October, November, December. You're going to see male tarantulas out looking for a mate in both the desert Southwest and some of the southern states like Texas, Florida, those areas in particular. Tarantulas, the male tarantulas, emerge from their holes around this time. That comes with the influx of the late season weather, and so the temperatures begin to maybe cool at night. We get the inundation of the moisture regimes into the desert Southwest area, and that brings those tarantula mating feelings out, and the males go on the look for the females. The females will actually stay at home. They'll make a nice hole in the ground with a web around it, and they'll hang out near their hole, and the males can travel maybe across this time period, the 3 or 4 month time period. Males can travel anywhere from 20 to 25 miles on a solo crawl out in the evenings, starting after the sun goes down, and they'll be looking for a potential mate to join with.
And what are they looking for? Are they just looking for that web, that hole? Are there pheromones in the air? How do they find their fuzzy friends so that they can quickly get out of sight and not bite me? Sorry, I said I wouldn't fearmonger. Okay, that part I made up. But how do they find the females?
Yeah, it's mostly through pheromones and random crawling. Tarantulas mainly are blind, although they have all those eyes. They use sight in a different way than you or I would, so they use a lot of shadows and light. And what they use is the pheromones and other sensory perceptors to look for those holes, and they will go out and even do a little mating ritual dance, tapping on the web, etc., to notify the female that they're present if the female isn't already out. And if the female chooses the mate, they will exchange their nuptial gift with each other. And in the short term, if the female hasn't fed, it may actually predate the male. Otherwise, the male will try to scurry away quite frequently after.
So wait, they make love in the tarantula way, and then if the female's hungry, she eats the person she just mated with?
That can be a common thing in both the spider community and the tarantula community. I know here in Southern California, the California ebony tarantula that we have down here in the extreme southern part of the state, that is a common occurrence. In nature, of course, the habitat and the lifestyle in the desert can be a little bit harsh, so that nutrient source is really important if that female is going to reproduce and lay and take care of those eggs in the future. So,
what a guy!
It's a very, very sad end to the males, and generally, the difference between the two species too, or the two genders here, the male and the female. The female can live anywhere up, 20, 25, sometimes even longer years. But the male's life is generally completed after the mating. So 2 to 3 years in a burrow hole as it develops, up to 7 or 10 years as it develops to sexual maturity. Then after the male finds a mate, almost always it finishes its life cycle. So within a very short window compared to the female tarantula.
Where there are spiders on the prowl, so too are there predators. There is a wasp out there, and a wasp with a name like this has got to be a terrifying creature without even you describing it to me. It's a tarantula hawk wasp. What does it do during this period, or how does it lay its eggs? How does it predate on spiders?
Well, another one of those fascinating and bizarre and maybe even a little gross parts of our nature and world. The tarantula hawk wasp is a really, really big wasp, 2 inches long maybe, and they're bright orange. They have these bright orange wings. You can see them flying by, not only because they're so big, but because of that coloration. And the way they reproduce, you ready for the gross part, is they will land on the back of a tarantula if they can capture it or land on it, and they will actually impregnate the living tarantula with its larvae. It'll stun it with its sting, and then it will lay its eggs inside of it and will drag that tarantula back to a hole in the ground that it's prepared. The wasp has prepared a hole in the ground. It'll take it back, bury it in that hole, and then the insects will eat their way. The baby insects will eat their way out from the interior of the tarantula, meaning that tarantula probably did not enjoy the end of its life.
Dan, remind me never to leave my house again. What are some things about tarantulas and spiders that people don't know or that make them such fascinating creatures for study?
Well, I think one thing I'd always love to say is tarantulas are not uniform across the United States right now. There hasn't been a ton of deep dive into speciation, genetic speciation of them. The last one, I believe, reading literature is somewhere around 2008, 2009. We started to see genetic work done with them. And although there are 29 identified species in the U.S., I think it's known that if you were to continue that genetic work, we would end up speciating a lot more. So they're very unknown still. So we'd love for people to be interested in them. It's one of those species that doesn't get a lot of love, right? Because it maybe is so scary. But the other thing I want to just say, tarantulas in general are crucial components of their ecosystem. As predators, tarantulas help control populations of insects and other arthropods, such as beetles, grasshoppers, etc. They contribute to the ecologic balance by being ambush predators that help regulate that invertebrate biodiversity. They serve as prey. They actually serve as food sources for things like coyotes or kit foxes out here in the desert. And last, the burrows that they make, the holes in the ground, they really improve soil aeration and water filtration. And those burrows can serve as refuge for lizards and other desert homes. So in short, the tarantulas serve as ecologic stabilizers. And so they're really important to our ecosystem.
Were you hired by Spider's PR crisis team to skew the negative media opinion of them? Because if you were, you're actually doing a great job.
Big tarantula has gotten to me. They've surpassed my government funds, and so.
Well, I'm a little less scared of them, and they are fascinating creatures, and I guess people can try to watch them during mating season, but leave them alone is my advice. Dan McCamish is a senior environmental scientist for the Colorado Desert District of the California State Parks. Dan, thanks for talking to me today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, David. Thanks for having me.
After the break, stories from the technology sector, including the rideshare app that was forced to update its policies after they refused to cooperate when a child was left in a back seat.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
They say to only bring what you can carry. So with the all-new 2025 Ford Expedition Tremor, bring a lot. Like 3 dirt bikes, a few tents, an entire crew ready to make memories. A panoramic 24-inch display, and the confidence to push your limits. The all-new 2025 Ford Expedition Tremor.
Always consult the owner's manual before off-road driving. Know your terrain and trail difficulty and use appropriate safety gear. Max payload varies based on accessories and vehicle configuration. See label on door jamb for carrying capacity of a specific vehicle. Always properly secure cargo.
The last show with David Cooper. Procrastinate your life away with us.
It is time for Technology Time. We are joined by expert Carmi Levy to follow up a story back in April. Something very similar happened to him and I. Carmi once left me in the back of a rideshare and then sent the driver off without removing me from the car. Carmi, welcome to the show.
But I paid him extra for that, and he did a really good job. I think you were in another county by the time you realized that you had been dumped. So,
and that's the story of how I met my future ex-husband. This is just getting weird. Look, this is actually not a funny story. A woman had an Uber car drive off with her baby in the back seat. That is every parent's nightmare, right?
Oh, it is. I mean, imagine they had 3 kids. They're coming back from they were out on a date with their kids, and they were putting the other kids in the house, and the last child was still left in the car in their car seat. And then the Uber driver, unbeknownst to the family, drove off with the child, which is bad enough because normally you would think, oh, okay, it should be fairly easy. Just, contact Uber through the app. They'll contact the driver. He'll come back and bring the kid back. No big deal. And what ended up happening was she found, because the app didn't allow direct contact, the Uber customer service, which put her on hold, did not allow her to contact them. They called the police. The police reached out to Uber, and they refused to contact the driver directly, said, we have a portal for submitting these requests. Do so there.
Can you imagine your baby's on? You've lost your baby, you've lost your child in an Uber, and they're like, so you have to submit that to our web portal. Wild.
And that's kind of the problem, right? Is that, it's like their protocol was so restrictive that they said, we can't allow you to contact the driver directly because we have privacy guidelines in place to protect the privacy of the driver. And even in a case of extreme emergency, like a child has been taken in the back of a car inadvertently, but still, they simply couldn't see past that. And so they have now said, Uber Canada has, they say they've changed their emergency policies. policies so that if this does happen again, that it will be far easier for both customers as well as law enforcement to obtain emergency contact information with the driver so they can call them and figure it out. They've apologized to the customer, and she, of course, says she's absolutely elated that they're updating their policies. I mean, the cynic in me thinks this is Uber's hoping to avoid a massive lawsuit because in a case like this, and I'm a parent of 3. Thankfully, I've never lost my kids, but that has always been my biggest fear. And I can only imagine what that's like. And so, the fact that they're doing this, I think is the least they can do. But I think they're just trying to avoid further litigation, not just from her, but probably from all the other cases that we haven't heard about.
I wonder if they settled like really, really, really out of court. Like they'll be like, hey, by the way, we don't have to get any lawyers involved, but if you accept our apology and we'll fix it and we'll give you a little money. I'm not accusing them of doing that.
It's quite possible. Yeah.
I'm not saying it happened. I'm just going to add the word allegedly so I don't get sued. But I do wonder if they're just trying to cover their bases and they got ahead of this one in terms of a lawsuit.
I would be hugely surprised if this wasn't run through their legal team, and if all the I's weren't dotted and T's weren't crossed. And so this is Uber. This is a company that has used litigation countless times as it has moved into different jurisdictions, including the GTA. And so I certainly wouldn't put it past this company. This is a company that has quite the reputation when it comes to dealing with customers, dealing with competitors, dealing with the municipalities where it operates. And so I think it's a positive that they've fixed the glaring error, but I think this is a message to the entire gig economy and every other company that delivers these kinds of services through an app, is that you literally, I mean, one of the reasons why they are cheaper than conventional alternatives is there isn't all that infrastructure in place. You don't have call centers. You don't have customer service representatives standing by. You don't have toll-free numbers that people can call. And in many cases, it's an AI chatbot that is doing this, or it's perhaps a single operator in an overseas call center. So I think that puts the entire industry on notice that business model puts people at risk. And this could have had a tragic ending, and thankfully it didn't. And unfortunately for the industry, changes need to be made.
Yeah, I just don't understand why the cops can't call a company and say, hey, there's an emergency. A child is lost. We're about to put out like an Amber Alert equivalent from wherever you live. And they're like, oh, sorry, there's a portal. That's like, it's so insane to me that these big tech companies don't think of like, okay, there's an emergency where the cops need info and they need it now. And they don't account for that. But I guess now they're saying they do, so whatever, we believe them.
Yeah, and they don't get sued. Good for Uber.
Speaking of getting sued, let's go to an Ontario city right now that fell victim to a cyber attack. They had insurance, but that claim was denied. I remember asking you about this a few weeks ago. Can you get cybersecurity insurance? And you were like, yeah, most companies don't, some do. Tell me about what happened here.
So this was the city of Hamilton. This started last February, where they were victims of a very significant ransomware attack that took down most of their civic systems. So their website, if you wanted to pay taxes, pay a ticket, file for a zoning change, whatever, all of those platforms, public-facing systems were impacted. And in many cases, some of those systems were deemed unrecoverable after the event, and the city has now spent huge amounts of money, $18.3 million, to rebuild everything from scratch. And so what I find interesting is that they say they were the ransomware demand was $18.5 million, and the city refused to pay it. And now they spent almost that much on recovery.
To their credit, they might have sent the money and then got nothing in return.
Exactly. And then the FBI, CSIS, all law enforcement agencies, in fact, recommend that you do not pay a ransom in a ransomware event, simply because, you're dealing with criminals. They can very easily take the money and run. And even if they don't, even if they then give you the decryption key, there's not, that marks you as a likely target. If you're willing to pay once, you will be willing to pay again. And the statistics show that victims who pay ransomware ransoms are much more likely to be targeted in future. And so the tragedy in this is that Hamilton had cybersecurity insurance in place. But when they went to process the claim, the insurance company refused it, saying you did not have two-factor authentication in place on all of your applicable systems. And of course, that was in the fine print of the policy. The city didn't live up to it, and the claim was denied. And so this is another one of those lessons. It's like, yeah, you can pay for cybersecurity insurance, but if you let down the most basic security protocols and best practices in your day-to-day operations, the insurance company is going to look at you and say, sorry, you're on your own. And that's what happened here. And I'm hoping that other cities, other governments at all levels are going to be put on notice that they're reading this and thinking, do we have 2FA in place? Are we doing all the things that our cybersecurity insurance policy says we should be doing? Or are we also at risk of not being covered in the event of an incident? This is, it's pretty shocking. Quite frankly, if I were a Hamilton taxpayer, I would be incensed.
Now, it's always bold when an insurer denies a claim to a government entity. You know, it's one thing, it's like, oh, my car insurance, I got an accident. They tell me it's my fault. And they're like, what are you going to do? Sue us? But a city's got deep pockets and lawyers on staff, and I would be surprised if this is the end we hear of this. It's a pretty bold thing to deny an insurance claim to an entire city, but on the other hand, they did not have two-factor auth, and if that was clearly stated in the policy, maybe it won't end up in the court. It's just, I don't know. I wonder if we were hearing the end of this. That's all.
Yeah, I don't get the sense, just based on comments that I've seen from Mayor Andrea Horvath, I don't think they're going to continue to litigate this. I think they're basically admitting that they did not live up to the standards expected by citizens. And in the end, it's citizens who pay the bill. So I think Hamilton's going to eat this. They're going to use it as a learning experience, and they're going to move forward. And I'm willing to bet that if you walk through a Hamilton civic office today, all of their people are using two-factor authentication. And there are probably signs up in the office reminding people to do that.
We're here with Carmi Levy. It is time for technology time, and our conversation will continue. A new study sheds light on some of the alarming ways in which teens are using large language models. These ways might surprise you and might make you think twice before letting your kids at the keyboard with ChatGPT. We'll cover that after the break. This is The Last Show. I am David Cooper.
Change is always happening. But no matter what changes in 5 years, there's one thing that will stay the same: the price of your internet. With the Xfinity 5-year price guarantee, you get 5 years of the most reliable Wi-Fi, with our best equipment included, for a price that stays exactly the same. Restrictions apply. New residential customers only. Taxes and fees extra and subject to change. Most reliable Wi-Fi based on Open Signal Awards USA. Fixed Broadband Experience Report, August 2024.
Broadcasting from the neutral zone, where every perspective gets diplomatic immunity. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
And we are back with Carmi Levy, a technology expert on It's Time for Technology Time. Do you let your young ones, your teenagers, use ChatGPT to help them with their homework, to chat with, to generate funny cat images? You might want to think twice based on a new study that shows that kids are using ChatGPT in kind of concerning ways. Carmi, welcome back to the show.
Good to be back with you, David. Yeah, I mean, as a parent, this frightens me. This is research that comes to us from the Center for Countering Digital Hate. And what they tried to do is they wanted to see what would happen if we pushed the boundaries. In other words, if we deliberately tried to see what we could get away with in ChatGPT. And that what they found was that it was trivially easy to pretend to be a teenager, specifically a 13-year-old. And it was trivially easy to get ChatGPT to tell them how you get drunk and how you get high.
Drugs and alcohol. That's an easy one. Use drugs and use alcohol. I mean, don't do those things, but that's how.
Exactly. Or what if you had an eating disorder and you wanted best ways to conceal it from your parents or your friends or your teachers? ChatGPT was able to do that as well.
That's ugly.
Or, and this is probably the most heartbreaking, how to compose a suicide letter to your parents or to your friends. And so...
Okay, so it can really tell you some dark and twisted stuff that it shouldn't be telling teenagers.
It can, and what's scary is that the guardrails that are supposed to prevent ChatGPT from creating this kind of output are very easily bypassed, and or they call them guardrails. And so, they said, well, in this case, in some cases, ChatGPT did sort of say, I cannot provide that answer. But then they said, well, what if I want to put it into a presentation? What if I'm asking for a friend? And it was able to easily bypass it, and then it produced it. And so kids being kids, they know their ways around. They know what the workarounds are. They share them online, and even OpenAI, Sam Altman has been speaking on podcasts over the last couple of weeks, admits that they're not doing enough, and they continue to sort of find new ways to make it safer, to prevent ChatGPT from going off the rails and suggest that kids engage in behaviors that could put themselves at risk.
It's so like Silicon Valley to just like innovate, get the product to market, get it first to market, make it useful, generate a lot of buzz, generate a lot of money, get people on it, and then think of safety second. Like it's this afterthought. And then once the literature and user experiences start happening, the literature saying that it's unsafe, the user experience is showing it's unsafe, then maybe they'll put some safety guardrails on there. And ChatGPT is like a perfect example of this.
What was Meta's motto way back when it was known as Facebook, or early in the days when
move fast and break things?
Move fast and break things, exactly. So, and that I think very nicely sort of summarizes, encapsulates the ethos that's driving all of this. Everything is based on growth, on revenue, on margin, on the size of your network, engagement, how much advertising revenue you can generate from that. And there's really no room in that entire conversation, that entire model for the moral, ethical, and legal challenges associated with driving growth in that way. And so, for example, the Cambridge Analytica scandal really was the most, obvious moral breach that we had seen in social media to date. But it was driven by, Facebook just trying to grow as fast as it possibly could. Morals be darned. And that's exactly where we were then. It's exactly where we are now, as AI tools kind of pick up the mantle where social media and search left off. And it's disturbing because you have governments kind of standing by, twiddling their thumbs, watching all of this play out and not holding companies like Meta accountable, or OpenAI, and knowing full well that these tools, these technologies are fundamentally flawed, and they're putting specific parts of the population, particularly young people, at risk. And there's no consequence to any of this. So OpenAI can say, "Oh, we're trying to do better. Our researchers are working on it," and that's enough. But there are lawsuits now against OpenAI for kids who unfortunately ended their lives by suicide upon the recommendation of a chatbot. And even that doesn't seem to be stopping the industry or making them sort of pause and go, "We've got to do something different. Got to do something better."
It's an alarming finding. I guess just monitor your teens, but don't monitor them too much because then they'll hate you.
Yep. Well, parents, have that conversation with your kids, and don't hover over them like helicopter parents, but certainly let them know that you're there as a trusted partner, and that as they have questions using tools like ChatGPT, that they know that you're there to help them. Don't be adversarial. Be a partner.
All right, speaking about AI, let's go to this Microsoft announcement. They've done a little bit of study, like a corporate funded study or whatever, predicting the jobs that are safe and perhaps unsafe from AI. And some of the job titles on their list are kind of hilarious. If you work with dead bodies, you're probably going to be fine. Is that the main finding here?
That's pretty much it. They came up with something called an AI applicability rating. And so the higher that applicability rating is, the more likely that job is to be disrupted by artificial intelligence. The lower the ranking, the safer you probably are. So as you can imagine, high AI applicability jobs were knowledge worker type jobs. So if you worked with computers, if you were a mathematician, if you worked in an office, doing admin type support, or, maybe if you were in communications, writer, editor, things like that, AI, of course, does a pretty good job of doing that. You're at greater risk of being replaced. But a physical job, if you're a nurse, if you are maintaining highways, fixing potholes, if you drive a ship, or if you're an embalmer, chances are AI isn't going to be embalming bodies anytime soon. It's also not going to be fixing the roof on the top of your house. And so those jobs are fairly safe, according to Microsoft's research. So, which is great. If you want to wash dishes and sand floors for a living, AI isn't coming for you. But if you're sitting at a keyboard, you might want to start reconsidering your career choices. I I do find, though, that it's a little bit rich that Microsoft is the one doing this research, simply because they're one of the biggest technology companies in the world, and they're also one of the biggest investors in artificial intelligence. And they, of course, have Copilot, which is an AI platform that they're kind of shoving into every product that they sell. So they have a lot to, both win and I guess lose, in this transition to AI. And so publishing research like this, maybe they think it highlights that they're trying to be the good guys here. But the reality is Microsoft can profit off of this transition, and research like this certainly doesn't change that.
Now, I was browsing through these titles. Some of the jobs, not that many people do. For example, dredge operators. Those are people who dig foundations for underwater bridges or whatever. I don't even know what a dredger does, but
they make the harbors deeper so the ships don't run aground.
Some of these occupations people do a lot, like sales representative, customer service rep. Those ones, Microsoft is saying, based on their study, are ripe for replacement with AI. The jobs that have a lot of people in them that are not going to be replaced, according to Microsoft, are nursing assistants and dishwashers. Those are jobs that many, many millions or many hundreds of thousands of people do. It is kind of interesting seeing what's likely to disappear, what's not likely to disappear. I do think we need to take this study with a grain of salt, but things will shift. That old job that people used to run around on roller skates plugging things into switchboards before telephone calls were digitally routed or even analogically routed, those jobs are gone. We will see a shift in the economy. I do wonder what those shifts will actually be, not just according to Microsoft.
Yeah, and I think these conversations, and even though this research is obviously, there's a certain bias there and it's somewhat limited, I think it's important that it starts that conversation. Every technology is disruptive by design. Every technology makes certain jobs obsolete over time, and then it creates new ones. And I think that conversation likely is going to be the discussion of our time, as it was when computers started becoming a thing, when smartphones started becoming a thing, when the wireless internet started becoming a thing. And as long as this stays on the agenda, and if it takes research like this for Microsoft to do it, I'm game.
Carmi Levy is a technology expert. He moonlights as an assistant. He'll help you set up your printer. Just email him, carmi@levy.com, probably. I don't know. Carmi, it's always a pleasure having you on the show during the commercial break. I need help with my printer. Thanks again, my friend.
I'm always there for you, David. Thanks so much.
Have you ever wanted to give your past self advice? Well, we don't have the technology to do that on this show, but we do have the technology to give our future selves advice. If you've got advice to give your future self, call us. The number 1-888-505-6644. It's advice for your tomorrow self from yesterday. It's confusing, it's informative, and think about what advice you would give yourself. That up next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
United Healthcare nurse Crystal checked in on a patient.
We do a routine call after surgery, and I could tell in her voice that she was struggling.
Crystal knew she needed help.
I knew that this is very serious. This is like septic. This is life-threatening.
And she knew just what to do.
And I called the hospital and said, she's coming in, here are her labs.
And got her the help she needed.
I see my role at United Healthcare as a life-saving role.
Hear more stories like Crystal's at uhc.com. Benefits, features, and/or devices vary by plan area. Limitation and exclusions apply.
What you can't see, dear listener, is Tony is doing a YMCA-style dance to his theme song. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show. We are joined by foreign correspondent Tony Five here on The Last Show, which I already said the name of the show already. Why not say it again? The Last Show. We are jingle first, content second. Tony, welcome.
David, like herpes and cholera, I'm trying to make us go viral. I thought I would try and invent a viral dance according to my wonderful name. So I was trying to do a dance with my hand going 5, turning it on the side, and then topping it off with my palm, making a T5. What do you think, David?
No, you have to point to your toe and then point to your knee.
Knee, and then do number 5.
Hey, there it is.
Oh, that could be viral, David. My God, like all the good influencers of the years, we could be there. So, how are you, dear boy?
I am very well, but because we're jingle first and content second, your theme song is merely part of the story. We need more music to set up the context for the listener.
So what you're saying is it's a jingle precursor for another jingle.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Brilliant.
Advice for your tomorrow self from yesterday, or maybe from today for tomorrow. If you're confused, you're not alone. This is what happens on The Last Show with David Cooper and Tony Five.
All right, it's advice from your yesterday self for today, from tomorrow, possibly next week. Tony, welcome in again.
David, always good. I love the fact that we're going from jingle to jingle, and we're here ready to mingle.
We are. The premise of this radio segment is very simple. We record advice yesterday for our future selves, which are our today's selves. We play the advice today, which is advice for our future selves from the perspective of yesterday, which is today now. We play that, and then we see whether we followed our advice from the past, reaching into the past, connecting to the past. It's the best thing short of a time machine.
Fantastic. Very easily coveted, my friend. Go for it.
It's completely easy to follow. Should we start with my advice or your advice? I'm like...
Let's try you for... Let's swap it around a bit. Let's start with you.
All right. Well, we have actually a special guest who joined me for my advice, which happened because something traumatic happened to me last night.
Hello, David. It's your yesterday self. You were just cooking a delicious pasta here with your girlfriend, Miranda, who's part of this today.
I am.
And while cooking, you moved one of the pots off the stove because you didn't want it in the way. And as a result of it not being in the way, you then decided to rest your arm on the stove, and now it's pussy and burnt. Is it a 1st-degree burn or a 3rd degree? What's the worst one?
3rd degree is the worst one. I think it's 2nd degree because you have a blister.
Oh, lovely. Don't rest your arm on the stove. That's your advice. Any final thought of the day, Miranda?
I feel like you're generally a little cavalier about things that you put on the stove, like you're putting cloths on the stove, and I think you don't operate with enough fear around the stovetop.
Fear in stovetops. That's your advice with special guest girlfriend Miranda.
I mean, a cloth on a stove, okay. Arm on a stove, I think is worrying.
I once put a mitten on the stove while the burner was still on and lit the mitten on fire. And, you know, I just, if as long as I'm not using that burner, I treat it as a surface. But what she's saying is I should stop doing that for kitchen safety purposes. I have a huge blister on my arm, which I just showed Tony.
Oh, wow. I didn't even notice that. Yeah. Respect the burner, David. Good Lord. Is it hurting? Is it painful? Is it pussy?
Yeah, it's pussy. I always thought 1st degree was the worst, like 1st degree murder. Like first is the best. It's the most. It's you did the best job.
Yeah.
You were the worst possible person. You're the first bad person out there. But no, I'm wrong.
I thought their 1st, 2nd, and 3rd degree burns are the percentage area per skin, isn't it? Because you know the biggest muscle on the body is skin.
Yes. Is it a muscle though? I think it's an organ, not a muscle.
No, I think that statement is wrong. I think it's the biggest organ on the body.
Dr. Tony, PhD, MD, DVD,
Groupon qualified.
RFID.
2005, 2007. No, I think it's the biggest muscle on the body sorry, I lie. It's the biggest organ of the body, the skin.
Yeah, back to the burner. I don't know. I have to stop treating a cooktop as a useful surface because the burner was no longer on, but previously there had been a pot on there. So I'm like, I'll just rest my arm on there. And now I have this huge burn on my body.
Is it a gas burner you've got or like an electric? What is it?
It's gas. I wish it were induction or electric, but no, I couldn't afford to run the electrical lines. It's gas.
Oh, so it's gas lines. Okay. Do you not think cooking on gas is better?
I think induction is supposed to be better, but like me, I fell victim to the ad campaign, the pro-gas lobby that basically told the world that electric is bad to try to sell gas. I think induction is actually really good. Like chefs like it and stuff.
I didn't know that. I thought it was all about big gas selling gas products. I thought gas is better because it's infinitely more controllable for the skin.
Maybe. Well, no, induction, that they don't get hot to the touch because they like use magnetism to anyway, there's 2 types of electric. There's the coils,
yes,
which is like what they had in the 60s.
And to stop women getting pregnant, I remember.
That's something else entirely.
Okay.
But yeah, and so the coils are no good. They take forever, blah, blah, blah. They waste electricity. But induction, the newer technology, is supposed to be really good.
And in the latest stovetop technology from New York, David is unbelievable. I mean, I can't believe we're actually on air coming into people's ears. But anyway.
There is a chance that whoever's in charge of the radio station people are listening to right now cut the program because it was so awful. So there is a chance that right now you and I are the only ones hearing our show.
Isn't that strange that we are the only people at this present moment dealing with, what is the conventional sort of way to cook food.
There's also a chance that everyone listening to the show tuned out. So from that perspective, even if we're still on the air, we still could be the only ones listening to the program right now.
Brilliant.
Okay, Tony, your advice from your yesterday self for today, from yesterday. Advice for your tomorrow self from yesterday to be played today is this.
Hello, dear boy. Hello, listeners. Hope you're well. This is my advice for today, for tomorrow, that you're going to play tomorrow. That was yesterday. That will be for today. I am going to stop listening to other people's goals that they have in their mind for me, and that somehow I'm letting them down if I don't fulfill what they see as a good life for me. I'm going to wholeheartedly spend this weekend thinking about the things that I want and the goals that I want to achieve, and put in the back of my mind what people have expectations of me for. So that's it. That's what I'm doing. That's where I'm going. And I'll probably go downstairs and have a hot chocolate soon as well. Anyway, goodbye, good luck, good willing, and good will hunting. Take care. Bye-bye.
Tony, who's putting pressure on you and trying to project goals on you?
Just, I think some family members, I'm a sprightly 47, and then there are some people that are kind of made like offhand comments, and why am I married? Why am I settled down? Why don't I have kids running about? And,
Why do you roam the streets naked, shouting at squirrels?
Yeah, why am I on this 2-bit radio show, loving life, talking to you about induction cookers, when I could be out there raising a child, like doing something productive for society. And it sort of started getting to me because they kept saying to it, and I think one of the comments was like, oh, to be a man, you should be married and reproduce. And I said to the person, so am I less of a man because I haven't had children?
How about this one? To be a man, you mind your own business, and you learn how to do that to be an adult. That's my advice to them.
Yeah, it's true, right? And it's like, when they said it, I was like, okay, well. And I think when I said that to them, because I was so sort of taken aback, and I was like, am I less of a man or less of a person, less of a human, because I'm not hitched up and being miserable? I would say a good 80% of my friends and family who are married are really unhappy and don't have the freedom that I do. What if they want to talk about induction hobs, David, or parrots, on a mugging spree or drug dealing? What are they going to do?
They've got no outlet. They're just miserable, and they want to make you miserable too. And they're using the guise of not being a man. You know what a real man does? They don't tell other people how to live their lives. That's my opinion of what a real well-adjusted adult man should do. And that's not what your family member and friends are doing. So them. That's my advice.
Yeah, I know. I wasn't going that far, but yeah, I think this weekend I'm going to someone told me to write stuff down. So I'm going to write stuff like maybe 3 or 4 points of goals and things I want to do, and then kind of just work my way towards it. One, making a coherent radio show.
Tony, I support you in this. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, my friend. Bye-bye.
Tony 5, our foreign correspondent in London, England. A new study pits male and female pilots against one another on a simulated engine failure. And the women outperformed the men. Up next, we'll discuss research that's challenging old assumptions about who belongs in the cockpit.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
In the 70s, 4 young women were found dead. For nearly 50 years, their cases went cold. I'm Nancy Hixt, a senior crime reporter for Global News. In the season finale of Crime Beat, I share how investigators uncovered shocking evidence of a serial killer and hear exclusive interviews with the killer's family. Listen to the full season of Crime Beat early and ad-free on Amazon Music by asking Alexa to play the podcast Crime Beat.
The show that asks the questions other shows are afraid to ask. The Last Show with David Cooper.
There are a lot of unfair stereotypes about female pilots. And somebody did the research into whether they're true, and it turns out they're the opposite of true. Female pilots outperform their male counterparts when flying under pressure, according to science. I'm here with a neuroscience researcher from the University of Waterloo. Her name is Dr. Naila Ayala. Naila, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, David. Very happy to be here.
Why study this particular area? I kind of hate the stereotypes and the annoying, obnoxious, misogynistic things people say about pilots who are women. But I like that you set out to sort of check, are there differences? What made you curious about this area of research?
Yeah, so it's been really funny because most research in aviation hasn't really touched this subject. And a lot of that is because there's so few females going through the training pipelines and you're even ending up in the industry. I think they account for 6% of the entire aviation workforce. And so to really give you this big picture, we didn't actually set out to study this from the start. It was only when we ended up getting enough female pilots coming through our recruitment pipeline where we were actually able to say, do we think we're going to be able to actually have enough pilots, both female and male pilots, to really look into this properly? And luckily enough, we kind of got to the cusp of that. And so we set out to do this exploratory study, mostly because we wanted to really understand what were the barriers to entry or to retaining female talent, because 6% is such a small number.
Is it one of those industries where it kind of just is the way it is because it is the way it is? There's just a long culture of women not entering through the various pipelines, and that's how we end up in this situation?
So from what I've heard from my discussions with a lot of pilots or even trainees, it just seems to not be one of those career pathways that are brought up to their attention when they're young and growing and thinking about what they want to do when they're, growing up. And I think that is one of many different issues, really, that this study doesn't necessarily go into per se, but it really still shines the light on the fact that we probably should be doing a better job of really showing women in general, or even girls in general, that this is a career that they could be very well suited for.
How do we simulate pilots and how they perform under pressure? Like, how do you concoct a scenario? Because it seems to me that'd be dangerous to actually do in a plane.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, this in and of itself is a funny question to ask, especially when you ask people coming up with these, multi-million-dollar simulators that have all the bells and whistles to it. And really where we started was at the University of Waterloo. We now have this institute that studies aviation specifically. It's called Waterloo Institute for Sustainable Aeronautics. And they managed to get enough funding for us to get the exact same flight simulator that a lot of these early trainees are training on at their individual flight institution training organizations. So we have this high fidelity, which really just means super realistic flight simulation device on campus for research purposes only. And to really just explain that a little bit more, because I don't have a picture to show you or anyone else, it's almost as if you were walking into an actual flight cockpit without actually being in an actual plane. So you get to sit in the cockpit. You've got your own flight seat and another secondary seat next to you, as if you were in an actual, small single engine plane. And you've got this entire panel of different screens around you that mimics almost as if you were out there flying outside. Now, there's no motion in it, but all the feedback and vibrations you would probably get from, say, flying outside, even in a very windy, stormy type of weather conditions, you'll feel that in the cockpit. So it's pretty good at simulating a lot of those things. Now, when it comes to simulating emergency scenarios or anything like that, that's where I think we get a little bit more divisive in terms of how realistic this type of scenario was. And for us to try and get as close to, having it be as realistic as possible, we tried to surprise all the individuals coming into the study that we were running. So we had one emergency flight scenario where all pilots were surprised with in a total engine shutdown. We saved that for the very last trial of our entire experiment so that it didn't ruin the rest of the data we were collecting. Because there's obviously an anxiety response and, all these other things associated.
You kind of tricked them. You had them come in thinking that they were doing one thing, and then in the very end, you gave them that emergency scenario.
Exactly. Yeah. And so they were all surprised by that. And that's really what we wanted to get in response to this type of setup.
Let's get to the crux of it. There's a common stereotype, which I do not believe, but there is a common stereotype that men perform better than women under pressure. How did the participants perform, and were you able to flip this assumption on its head?
So I think this question seems super straightforward, but when it comes to the data is actually much more complex. So in our study, we looked at one very specific type of emergency within a very narrow population of individuals who are licensed to fly planes. We brought in these individuals who were licensed to fly single engine or very small multi-engine aircraft and looked at this engine failure scenario. And in this instance, we did find that female pilots were able to more rapidly identify what was going on. They were faster at getting the plane to land safely on the ground, and they were better at managing their airspeed when coming into the final approach and landing, which was really interesting because what we were hoping to see were differences in other things like where they were paying attention while all of this stuff was going on, which actually did not differ between male or female pilots. And based on some of the different tools we used while doing this research, we weren't actually able to determine the causes of what these differences or what led to these differences really, which was unfortunate. But really, I think what it shows is the fact that in this particular instance, females tend to outperform males. But in other research that has actually been done in collaboration with York University, they found the complete opposite, where males tended to perform better than female pilots with respect to managing spatial disorientation, which is another type of phenomenon that pilots constantly have to manage while they're up in the sky.
But isn't this mixed data really just proving the point that there isn't that much of a difference, that we shouldn't have 6% of pilots as women? This is a career field that could be great for women. I mean, should we market young kids? You can do this too. Flight schools, like outreach. I know a lot of fields have done kind of like addressing the gender gap by outreach at people and at the entry level or at the education level. Can't we use this data to say, hey, this is a career opportunity for you too?
Absolutely. I think this is definitely one of the biggest, benefits to especially my study coming out and being able to showcase that. But on the other side of it, I think having these different studies that almost seem like they contradict each other, I think sends a broader message out actually into the aviation industry and in terms of being able to improve current training paradigms really, because I think the way that pilots are being trained nowadays is very much this one-size-fits-all approach. And I think a lot of the data that will continue coming out of these types of studies, which I hope there will be more, will really demonstrate the fact that, there are strengths and weaknesses amongst almost all different types of pilots out there. And we have to really be improving our training technologies and our training methodologies to really be able to make training much more equitable and much more effective.
And you out there holding the negative stereotypes, stop doing that, I think is my advice.
Yes, definitely.
Based on the science, but also just stop anyway.
Yeah.
Naila, thanks for joining me. I appreciated the chat.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Naila Ayala is a neuroscience researcher at the University of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada. Coming up after the break, how watching hummingbirds, pandas, even a cave full of bats at the computer makes you feel more connected to other people. That's right, nature live streams aren't just entertainment. They might be good for your soul and might be a great way to help you find community. Details in a minute.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Broadcasting intimate details and useless information from an undisclosed location in New York City. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Can watching adorable panda videos or even bats on YouTube make you feel less alone, more connected with a community? A new study says yes. We are joined by social work professor at the University of Mississippi, Dr. Keith Anderson, to explore how watching nature live streams help you form surprising human connections and why they might be good for mental health. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate you having me on.
When I think of videos of pandas, when I think of videos of nature on YouTube, I don't think of them in this academic context. I think of myself in bed, trying to relax, watching something fun or funny or compelling. What made you decide to look into them from a more academic perspective to figure out what the benefits are of videos like this?
Well, I've done some work on green care farms, which are actual farms and ranches where people go during the day and engage in farm life, and they reap benefits from that. And I wrote up a study on that, and a person read this. This is when I was living in Montana. And she contacted me and said, Keith, you need to come see what I'm doing down at my ranch. And she had cameras set up all over her ranch that captured the ongoings of osprey, horses, donkeys, a river. And there was a whole community of people who would tune in to the ranch to watch these activities. And the interesting part of it is it's more than just distraction or I want to watch some cute pandas. These people formed an online community. So this shared experience brought them together. And I think that's what really intrigued me, that it was more than distraction or simple entertainment. It was a way of connecting people together.
Interesting. So just by watching the videos, starting to get involved with the creators, the commenters speaking to each other, maybe a forum, maybe a group on social media, these people started to get to know one another.
Yeah, they would go and visit the ranch and maybe they'd have a shared experience of seeing the osprey hatch from the eggs. And through chats, these online chats that they would engage each other on, it would be, hey, David, did you see that? Yeah, I'm awake too. It's 1:00 in New York. It's 6:00 in California. It was a shared experience, and they bonded over that. And I think nature, more so than a lot of other topics, can bring people together because it's very much a universal force that we're all immersed in, and most of us are very much interested in.
Is this just like having any other kind of common shared experience, maybe pickleball, or is there something more psychologically going on here? Like, is watching nature videos a form of maybe, digital mindfulness that you can share with other people?
Yeah, there's a biophilia hypothesis that says we have an innate connection with nature, more so than a connection with baseball or pickleball or something like that. It's a force that is rooted within us. And it's something that we can engage with, that we want to engage with. Most of us do. And there's a wide variety. While you might like pandas, I might like moose or something like that, or I might like the bears up in Alaska. There's a fat bear cam where they have cameras on these bears before they hibernate to see which bear gains the most weight. So there's all sorts of different media that you can engage with. These online live streams. So it brings people together through shared experiences. And that's one thing that I think we're lacking. When you go back and look at something like Bowling Alone, that notion that we're not joining clubs, we're not joining together in the ways that we used to. I think nature-focused live streams can bring us together in a really beneficial way.
Were you surprised by the depth of connection happening with the people watching these live streams in these chat rooms? What kind of stories or interactions of the people watching these things and forming a little community together stood out to you?
Well, one of the interactions I think that jumped out to me the most was this one particular group, which was focused on the ranch in Montana. It's called Days at Dunroven. One woman who passed away, she knew she was going to die. She asked that her funeral be live streamed and broadcast on the ranch platform so other members of Days at Dunroven could watch her services. And I thought that was just the ultimate way of saying I'm a member of a community and I want people to be able to say goodbye to me. So that I think really illustrates the depth of these connections that people can make.
You know, your study does flip this idea that commonly gets peddled. I often say this, that screen time isolates us. Is it possible that there's a right kind of screen time, like, I don't know, panda cams, that is good for our mental health and social well-being? You know, it's not just all doom scrolling on some video share app.
Yeah, and there's evidence to suggest that some of these virtual interactions with nature, not only it brings us together with other people with like interests, but they can find similar, I think, a little bit more muted benefits in terms of emotional well-being, decreases in anxiety, and they compared, I think it was one of the national parks cameras with actually visiting a national park. So there were comparable benefits, a little bit muted with the online engagement because you don't have the smell and the touch, but there are actual benefits to engaging with nature online.
I've had someone on the show who had a VR nature headset doing testing nature meditation versus real nature meditation, and the health benefits were there for the VR headset. Not quite as good, but still, it is there. However, to those that say it's just a bunch of bats flying out in a cave, what's the big deal? How would you convince that person? What would you say to them to get them to try to watch one of these live streams?
Well, what I would say is, like I said, the benefits are similar, a little bit muted from the actual experience with nature. But for a lot of folks that don't have access to nature or can't access nature due to disability or environmental or economic barriers, this is the next best thing to getting them out there. A lot of us can't visit the national parks. It's too expensive. It's not accessible. If I have a disability that prevents me from getting out there, it's the next best thing. And that's what I would say to them. And again, it's probably not for everybody, but for those who are interested, there are actual benefits. It can connect you with other people. For those who can't get out, it is really the next best thing to being outside.
Could a nature live stream be used sort of intentionally in maybe social work or therapy settings, for example, with isolated seniors or someone with limited mobility or, like you say, a difficulty leaving perhaps a dense urban environment?
Yeah, we recently completed a study looking at an activity or an intervention, I guess, focusing on nature-focused live streams for older adults with physical and cognitive limitations in assisted living. And we found that engaging with the live stream programming had benefits, emotional benefits, social benefits. It brought people together, it brought enjoyment, and it also helped them reminisce. So in this particular one, the osprey would fish and bring the fish back to the nest. And almost every single person had a fishing story. It was almost universal. So it facilitated reminiscence. It brought back memories. It was a shared experience. And it was really enjoyable for everyone.
If you had to recommend just one nature live stream to someone hearing this who is now curious, which one would it be, or what type of live stream would it be?
Yeah, there's some websites like explore.org, which have really a menu of live stream broadcasts. So maybe you're very much interested in owls. There probably is an owl cam somewhere. Maybe you're interested in dolphins. There's probably a dolphin cam somewhere. So that's a really good place to start out and find a live stream that is really catered to what you're interested in, or find one that you never even thought about. That might capture your interest too, or expand your what you know.
I'm thinking of starting one here in New York with the local flora and fauna. Maybe a Manhattan cockroach cam. Maybe I'm missing the point by doing that, though. Anyway, I appreciate you sharing this research, this study, and these findings, and thanks for your time.
Thanks, David. Really, really nice speaking with you.
Dr. Keith Anderson is a social work professor at the University of Mississippi. That is the show. As ever, thank you so much for tuning into it. Don't forget our show available as a podcast. Head to www.lastshow.pizza. That's lastshow.pizza. And there you can find out details about our podcast, including how to subscribe. Oh yeah, it's .pizza, not .com. There is no .com. I am David Cooper. This was not the first show. We'll be back tomorrow night. And I hope you have a great rest of the evening.
I'm Chris Hadfield. I'm an astronaut, an author, a citizen of planet Earth. Join me for a 6-part journey into the systems that power the world. Real conversations with real people who are shaping the future of energy. No politics, no empty talk, just solutions-focused conversations on the challenges we must overcome and the possibilities that lie ahead. This is On Energy.
Listen wherever you get your podcasts.